these valuations are out of the world. Like, I'm talking about they're extremely high. And there's actually a very interesting Forbes article. What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. My name is Andrew, and today I want to talk about esports, but more importantly, esports in the finance world, and why I personally think this is probably one of the most exciting time for investment banks to start looking into this industry. Because there's been a lot of growth in the space, and I think there's going to be a lot happening in the next few years from now. But before we dive too deep into that, I want to first talk about investment banks and exactly what investment banks are. Since, coming from a formerly investment banker myself, I have seen there's many confusions about the industry and exactly what we do. And no, contrary to popular belief, we're not necessarily those guys you saw in the Wolf of Wall Street, in which we're just going around trying to sell stocks to everyone. But what we actually are corporate financial advisors, meaning that we advise corporations such as Amazon, Google, Facebook, such as that sort, on different type of transactions that they can do. And what kind of transactions are these, right? And how I like to break it down, me personally at least, of what investment banks do. We do one of three main things, right? We take companies public. We advise them in mergers if they want to merge with other companies or acquire other firms. And we also cut loans for them. We cut checks, right? We issue loans, we issue debt, so for companies to help raise capital. So in a simple sense, that's basically what investment banks do. At least that's what investment banks do that we normal people care about anyways. So how does this all tie back into esports, right? And for this, I want to talk a little about esports and the industry itself. And basically, the industry of esports is something that's spread out of nowhere within the past 10 years. This is an industry that has basically grown to its billion-dollar valuation within the past decade. And according to an article at Business Insider, the industry is actually projected to surpass 1.5 billion by 2023. And this is actually quite amazing because gamers that were once sweating out in their mom's basement have now been able to grow to international stardom with fancy gaming houses and multi-million-dollar contracts that, were something that were never really seen before unless you live in South Korea or something, in which they've been doing this since the 2000s. And the once frowned upon leisure of playing games has now turned to an actual sustainable career for the lucky fews. And there's actually a Newzoo report, which Newzoo is a firm that does research on different industries, that actually estimates that there are approximately 500 esports viewers worldwide, with half of those viewers coming from Asian countries such as China, Korea, and Japan, because esports is bigger over there than it is here in the United States. And not only are these numbers impressive, but they're also very attractive for advertisers that want to basically cater to a different audience that are traditionally hard to target by other medias. And this audience is the millennial audience, right? And these audience are usually high income earners that don't really watch TV or listen to radio. I mean, no one really does anymore. Everyone watches Netflix or YouTube, let's be honest. But this makes it a very attractive audience. And this is why we have actually seen an influx of untraditional sponsors flowing into the industry, fighting to have their names being shown on these different streams of these esports competitions and such of that sort. By the way, did you know they actually had esports competitions for mobile games in Southeast Asia? You literally have 5 people sitting in a gaming booth on their mobile phones, just gaming out against one another and such.
Before I was able to say it, this is because of the fact that Xborg as well as the Hellcurt exist. But more importantly, Hellcurt and the damage from RRQ, it's gonna be there. They know it. They're gonna take it 2-0 for RRQ.
Yeah, I don't really get it either, to be honest. But with that, we have actually seen a huge increase in investment in the industry in the past few years. And it was actually a Deloitte report that came out that said over 4.5 billion US dollars were invested in the esports industry in 2018 alone, which is up from 490 million from 2017, which is an astronomical number if you ask me. And this is actually very interesting because a lot of these investments were driven by different of these esport leagues that were starting to beginning their franchising models. So what were those, right? These were the LCS, the League Championship Series, the Overwatch League, and also the Call of Duty League began to have this permanent franchising models in which teams can buy into the leagues with these multi-million-dollar contracts. And because they required these teams to have these multi-million-dollar buy-ins, a lot of these teams had to go out and find investors to invest in companies so they can afford it. Because a lot of these esports organizations and teams out there were not profitable businesses. You know, they're very much in the red in terms of net income. And when these esports teams went out to find these investments, and for those of you guys who don't know, when you go out to find investment, your investor basically has to give your firm a valuation to know how much they're investing and how much percentage of the company they're getting back. So just for example, right, let's say you're an investor and you want to invest in company A. You give company A $20 million and you say, I'll give you $20 million for 20% of your company. You're basically saying that the company is valued at $100 million because you're giving them $20 million for 20%. So 100% will be $100 million. So that's basically, in simplest term, how valuation works. And a lot of these esports firms, when they went out to get these valuations and these investments from these venture capital and private equity firms, these valuations are out of the world. Like, I'm talking about, they're extremely high. And there's actually a very interesting Forbes article that talk about the most valuable esports companies in 2020. And we have like some of the top esports companies, the largest ones in North America, such as TSM, coming in like at a $410 million valuation. We have Cloud9 here at 350, Team Liquid here at 310, and these are very high numbers for most of these firms. We don't know their financials, but from my knowledge, a lot of them probably aren't that profitable up until this point. And you know, this is basically the valuation GameStop was at before Reddit took it to the moon. So anyways, this is all cool and dandy, but where do investment banks come into play here? And as I mentioned before, investment banks do one of three things. They take companies public, they support companies in merger and acquisitions, or they issue loans to them. And this is a very interesting time for investment banks in the esports industry because investment banks are starting to pay more and more attention to the industry. And actually in 2019 was the first time we saw a pure-play esports team / company go public on the stock market, and that company was Astralis Esports. And Astralis Esports is a European esports team that plays in games such as League of Legends and Counter-Strike Global Offense. And for those of you OG League fans out there, Astralis Esports also is the owner or the original owner of Origin before they merged under one brand called Astralis Esports now. And those of you guys know who know Origin, that was founded by former superstar Spanish mid laner Xpeke, which we all remember very well for.
Is anyone going to be able to deal with this one? Catches him with another X. He's very low. They're pushing on the next to his I do not believe it.
Sorry, Ocelot. So yeah, you can literally invest in esports companies now if you somehow have a broker that can buy your stocks on the Denmark Stock Exchange. In terms of mergers and acquisitions, we have actually seen an increase in activities in merger and acquisitions within the esports space as well. And the reason for this is because within the esports ecosystems, a lot of these companies are still very small since it's a very fragmented industry at this point still, meaning that a lot of companies are starting to merge together or buy out smaller competitors in order to basically combine their operations to stay relevant within this increasing competitive space. And one of the largest mergers that actually happened within the esports entertainment space is when Immortals Gaming Club acquired Infinite Esports, which is the parent of Optic Gaming, naming it the largest change of control transaction in esports history. And what's interesting was that JP Morgan actually advised on this transaction and had a press release about this transaction, and they actually made a video about this transaction and why they thought it was like an interesting one.
Immortals Gaming Club is a vertically integrated esports and competitive gaming company. We have 4 brands that compete in esports around the world.
What's interesting about the esports ecosystem right now is that it's really developing real time. There is so much growth potential around the teams and the excitement. And when you look at the demographics and the fan engagement, there's a really bright future here, and we're excited to be a part of it.
And the list goes on and on. Canadian investment bank Canaccord Genuity did a $23 million convertible bond with FaZe Clan back in 2019. And another esports firm in the United Kingdom called Guild Esports actually went public back in September 2020 with David Beckham as their spokesperson. So in conclusion, we're starting to see more and more investment banks slowly seep their way into the industry as the esports ecosystem continues to grow and thrive. And it is my personal belief that within the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to start seeing a lot more activities in the space. We're going to see a lot more mergers and acquisitions, along with different types of esports companies going public on the stock market, as investors in these companies are going to start wanting to cash out their investments that they made 5 years ago. And honestly, guys, I'm barely just scratching the surface here. But ending on that note, that wraps up my video. Please let me know what you guys thought of the video. Please let me know if you guys have any thoughts about what I said today. Let me know in the comments. And if you guys liked the video, leave me a like and consider subscribing, as I plan to make similar videos like this in the future in which I talk about interesting trends or just things that I'm thinking about in the moment that I want to talk about. And I'm still figuring out this whole YouTube thing, so if you guys have any feedback for me personally, how I can improve my video to make better content, let me know as well. But aside from that, I hope to see you guys all next time. Bye.